Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi everyone, my name is Pearl. Full name is Pearly Ng, but you can call me Pearl. I'm originally from Malaysia, so born, bred, and raised in Malaysia, and currently resides in the city of Melbourne, and also working as the head of Smart City Innovation and Improvement with one of the local government here in Australia, which is the city of KC. On top of my 9 to 5, I'm also currently doing my PhD right now, looking at how we can drive innovation and the agile ways of working in the property and construction industry. So a little bit about myself. Uh, the idea of becoming or be part of the STEM field hasn't been part of what I was planned since I was a kid. Growing up, I've always loved mathematics. I like numbers. And the only career that I thought of back then when I was a primary school student was to be an accountant, because that's the only one I know. That's the only one that I saw on the drama series back then when I was a kid. There isn't a lot of family members of mine who actually went to university. So in fact, within my immediate family, I'm the first one to manage to go to university and also graduate with an engineering degree. So how did I got into STEM? It's a really quite an unexpected journey over there. So when I was around 16, uh, my school started to establish a robotics team. And back then I was like, oh, what is this robotics thing all about? I don't really know anything about robotics, and it sounds way too fancy for someone like me to be part of such a sounds really cool team. And one of my school teachers back then came to me and say, since you are so comfortable with mathematics and science, why don't you give robotics a shot? And after thinking for a bit, I spoke to my parents about this, and my mom went like, oh, well, you have nothing to lose. So why don't have a go with participating in the robotics competition and being part of the school robotics team? So that was like my first point in understanding a little bit more about technology and engineering. So after going through the robotics competition, and really it was during the robotics competition, I was really, really lucky to be blessed with some really good mentors who taught me about some of the technical stuff on how to build a robot, how to program a robot, and also really fortunate to have a very supportive group of friends. So it was 5 of us putting together the robot and making sure that the robot works. So the way the competition ran was that we all need to program different types of robot and use the robots to solve different types of challenges within a something like a mini play block city. So some of the challenges include how can we move some of the waste, garbages from the coal mine to a renewable energy site, things like that. And I think it was during that competition where I start to realize that some of the technical knowledge and skills that I have learned could actually bring an impact to the society. So it was a good combination of not just the knowledge, the theory, but also the practical skills, and most importantly, the benefits and the impact that robotics or engineering could potentially be contributed to the larger population or to the society as a whole. So that was how I got more and more interested into robotics, and then I started to participate more into different types of robotics competition. And and it was also during that time, well, 16 years old, we were also deciding on what subjects that we want to pursue in university or pre-university, what are the subjects that we want to do a deep dive on. And I was really struggling at that point in time because everything seems to interest me. And again, the same teacher came back and asked me to consider having a career path in chemical engineering because I like chemistry back then. I love mathematics, and I also did some quite good projects in my school robotics competition. So the same teacher came to me and said, "Oh, why don't you consider a career in chemical engineering? Because it's a good combination with chemistry, physics, maths, science, everything." So I decided to give chemical engineering a shot. So years and years went by, went to university, did a Master of Chemical Engineering with business, graduated with a degree from the University of Melbourne. So very grateful for all the support that I've gotten throughout the whole journey there. And throughout my 5 years in engineering school as well, it was not just about learning all the formulas, mathematical formulas, chemical equations and whatnot. There's really also a practical element of learning all these skills and theory and really putting them into practice. And it's always what I found throughout the whole process is that it is always the practical stuff like the science experiments, the programming, the hands-on work that really excites me. So after graduation, again, as a graduate, what we do is at that point in time, all I want was have a job in the STEM field. So I started applying to many different companies all across the world. And again, of very good fortune, got a graduate position with IBM back then. And also very lucky to be involved in a couple of digital transformation projects in Southeast Asia. And it's very surprising that most of the digital transformation projects that I have been working on are always in the field of architecture, engineering, and construction. And that's how I slowly built my expertise on driving digital transformation in the sector. Um, and one of the projects that I worked back then was also designing a smart city strategy for a small city in Asia. And it was during that period of time where I also learned a lot about the importance of technology, and not just the technology itself, but also the importance of being people along with us during the journey of implementing a technology. So yeah, and because of that, again, the interest sort of piled up, and I slowly built my expertise in this area, and also noticing some of the impact that technology can bring to the society. So been in the industry for around 8 to 9 years now, and I'm still doing the same thing. Of course, I mean, same thing means same type of work, but every day my work can be very challenging, and every day comes with a different challenge. Um, and yeah, my a day in a life can look very different as well. Sometimes I'm more on the strategy side of things where I start thinking about what's next, how do we plan for the future, and there are also times whereby I go out and talk to people like clients, and also really listening to what's happening around the industry to know our operational landscape. One thing I really like with this STEM field, and one of the reasons why I stay in them for so long is the vast learning opportunities that we have in this area. So, especially with science and technology, every day we have new technologies, new invention that come out, and it's always very fascinating to see all these technologies that they are coming up. How can we apply them, and also how can we make them to make our day-to-day life a little bit easier, especially when it comes to the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. Technology is becoming even more important because if you look at some of the buildings around us, last time it may take like ages to build a building, but these days with technology, there's offsite construction. You can build all these different pieces at different time and then bring them together. So technology has really enhanced the efficiency in how we build buildings, and not just that. Yeah, so if we look at some of these high-rise building that we have today, sometimes to do all this inspection, it can be quite dangerous. But these days with technology, we can bring in drones and whatnot to do these inspections without needing to send people to the site. So in a way, we are saving people's time and we are also reducing harm. So one of the things that I found quite interesting in our sector as well is not just how technology can help to make our day-to-day life easier, but it also helps us to save lives in some way or another. So these are some of the reasons why I find this industry really fascinating, and especially when it comes to the field of smart city, which is also something that's very close to my heart, is that we realize that technology can do a lot of things, but a lot of times the technology, in my view, can only be as smart as the people who are using it. So it's important that when we are doing or using technology, we need to make sure that we are also bringing the people along with us in this journey as well. Um, so if I take, for example, my parents, they are probably in their 60s right now. And for them today to use technology, sometimes it can be quite a challenging task for them. So making sure that all these technologies that we are implementing is not just benefiting one groups of the society, but also multiple groups. And making sure that people are confident when it comes to using technology is also another big thing when it comes to smart city. Because if we look at smart city around the world, for example, Singapore, they have most of their services, like public services, all available in some way or another in the form of a digital format. So people can do banking, payment, any request on public services through their mobile phone. And one thing that Singapore government did really, really well is that they also have like teaching programs, or diverse, what you call digital equity program, to train different people, especially those who are a little bit vulnerable when it comes to using technology. They also teach all these people on how to use technology as well. So when it comes to implementation of technology within the society, in my view here is to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind when it comes to putting out all this new technology out there. And with the field of smart city as well, we also realize that the definition of smart city can be very different depending on where we are, because every different communities will have very different needs, and it is important for us to tailor our smart city strategy based on the community that we are serving, because they all have different aspirations, different ambitions, different community group. One area might be focusing on economic development. So they focus more on their smart city strategy, will focus more on entrepreneurship program, for example. But for some areas whereby flood or natural disaster can be a pain point to the city, then the smart city strategy will be on the use of technology to help to reduce the risk or minimize the impact of all these natural disasters. So all, I would say that the smart city field as well is also very exciting in a way that there's always that people centric, i.e., putting people first when it comes to deploying all this technology, because ultimately any technologies that we put out there, it needs to serve the good of the people. And especially these days with AI being the hot topic, it is even more important for us to make sure that any algorithm that we put there, they are treating everyone as much as we can treat everyone fairly.
Wow, what a journey you have been on. This is absolutely incredible. So tell me, what challenges have you come across and how have you navigated these challenges as a woman in STEM up until this point?
Yes. Yeah, good question here. And I need to also make this really clear that the challenges that I face may not be the same as anyone who's listening to this, because everyone has a very different experiences here. So don't make me don't feel like my challenge is something that will hinder you. Some of the challenges that I face, of course, entering STEM is, first of all, I came from a family with all girls except my dad, who is a male. Me and my two younger sisters, we are all females. So I came from a family where, like, we don't have a lot of examples of males representation, where we don't really see female being an engineer. So that to me is also the first challenge, because the awareness is not there in the first place. The idea of becoming an engineer never once crossed my mind. Um, so not being able to see what's possible is definitely one big challenge there. So that's why when my teacher told me that, oh yeah, why don't you try robotics, that time it really threw me off, because I just cannot imagine myself doing it, having not seen anyone doing that. So that's probably one of the biggest challenge, is I cannot see how success looks like. So the journey in front of me has always been very blurry, and is always learning the ropes along the way, because there isn't a lot of examples or people that I can consult with, especially when it comes to someone who is a female being an engineer. Um, so that in particular has been a challenging one. And second as well, back in the days when I was an engineering student doing an internship, another challenge that I found last time, and probably not so much today, is also the lack of support for services and facilities for female engineering students. So one of the internships that I did back then was fixing the air conditioning unit in the basement of a building. And I remember back then, I was the only female intern among that group of students, and I was looking for a female toilet. And um, I couldn't find one, and I asked the security guard out there and say, "Oh, where can I go to the toilet?" And he went like, "Oh, there's no female toilet in this building. You have to
Oh,
go to
wow.
the other floor." And I went like, "Oh." So back then, one of the challenges, I think, when it comes to urban planning and design as well, there's a bias here that there's no female engineers, and hence we don't prepare a female toilet at that level of the building. However, I think things have changed these days. So the lack of support is also another one. So lack of representation, lack of role model, and also the lack of the necessary support for female engineers back then. Well, I think these are the two key challenges that I face.
Oh, wow. Now, the concept of a smart city, can you give us a definition and what the core components of a smart city are?
Yeah, I would say in general, and I probably touched on about this a little bit earlier, there isn't a fixed definition for a smart city, because every city, we all have very different communities. And it is not fair for one city's smart city definition to be applied as a blanket definition for all the different cities. Ultimately, the city smart cities definition needs to be customized and tailored to whatever city that the city is operating at. So I won't say that there's a single definition. One of the more common, I would say, um, fundamentals or principles over here is the use of technology and data for the good of the citizen. So it really depends on what's the need, who are the people, what's the need of those people, and how can technology play a role in serving those needs. So that's, to me, the key questions that we need to ask when it comes to putting together a smart city strategy.
Okay. So, how do you ensure that technological advancements in smart cities are inclusive and don't leave certain demographics behind?
Yeah, I would say this is also another very challenging task that I believe that most cities are grappling right now. Um,
Mm.
it's hard to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind like 100%. But one of the things that we can do to progressively make this better and to minimize the impact here is to bring different perspectives to the table when it comes to the decision when implementing a particular technology. So this is, for example, making sure that when we are deciding, say, a data capture tool, what data do we want to capture, who do we want to capture, and we want to bring the different people, different experiences together. So most importantly is to have people who thinks differently, like compared to us, because we need people who will be able to challenge the way we think. Let's be fair on this, is that everyone will have biases, everyone will judge in some way or another. So it's about bringing that different perspective so that people can challenge our bias. And we at the other end also need to make sure that we are open to listening to those different views and different perspectives. So bringing different people with different perspective, live experience will be quite important. Second is also bringing the subject matter experts. So in this day and age, we have data experts, we have cybersecurity experts, and it's very important to bring all these experts because they are the ones who know the in and out of a particular technology. So, for example, if you want to build a car, if you don't have the mechanics, then I think we are putting ourselves into a very dangerous position over here. So bringing the subject matter experts is quite important. And the third one is also bringing the community along with us in this journey, because the community will ultimately be the user and the beneficiary for any technology that we implemented. So bringing them together in this process will be important. So in order for us to minimize the possibility of us leaving someone behind, I would say bring people bring different people to the table that include people with different experiences, different perspectives, subject matter experts, as well as the community.
I love that. Now, I know you are a passionate advocate for women in STEM,
Yes.
and you initiated a project called the Superstar of STEM. What advice would you give young women who are aspiring to join the STEM field?
Yeah, and to clear this out as well, I didn't initiate the program. I was one of the recipients to be
Okay.
named of, yeah. So I was one of the people who got selected to the Superstar of STEM program. And I think one
Right.
of the advices that I'll give to the next generation of leaders would be to keep experimenting and keep learning. That was the same advice that my science teacher gave me back then. Because this world is really, really fascinating. We never know what we don't know. So always be curious, always be learning,
Yes.
and talk to people as well, because I think different people will have different experiences and different perspectives. So by hearing different stories, it will challenge the way we think. So I think that's the most important thing, which is to be open to learning and don't be
Yeah.
afraid to fail, because every failure is also a point of learning.
Oh, fantastic. Now, let's touch a little bit on sustainability.
Mm.
How are sustainability initiatives being integrated in the smart city agenda, do you think?
Yeah. So I'm not a sustainability expert.
Mhm.
Um, that said, there are a lot of things that we do right now to make sure that, and I believe most cities are also doing it today, to make sure that we integrate sustainability into our agenda, because that's really important. One of the things that we are looking at is, of course, carbon. So looking at how we can use technology to either capture how much carbon we are emitting, and then use that to use the data that we have captured to take some decisions over there on some of the measures that we can have in place to reduce our carbon emission. So that's one thing. The other one as well, which is not so much on the technology side of things, but also looking at circular economy. So what are the products that we are bringing into our organization as a
Mm,
whole? How do we make sure that all these products are also sustainable in the long run? So it's not just looking at how we dispose the product at the end of life, but thinking about
mm,
the possibility of reusing them and recycling them as well. And another surprising thing that I think is also something that most of the smart city projects or subject matter experts will discuss is also the use of technology. So these days
Yeah.
we are putting a lot of sensors out there to capture the data in some way or another, different types of data that we are capturing. And a lot of
Yes.
times people talk about deploying all these sensors, but one of the more important thing as well is all these sensors are objects that will have an end of life. So what do we do with all these sensors when it
Mm.
comes to their end of life? So one of the key things here is to make sure that we dispose them in the correct manner, which is adhering to all the sustainability guidelines and principles out there.
Fantastic. Now, let's have a little thought experiment to end our interview.
Sounds
I'm
good.
going to take you back to the younger you,
Mm,
that young girl who grew up in a household full of women, got thrown into a industry where it's male dominated. Based on what life has taught you, if you could go back to the younger you and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up to this point,
mm.
what would you say to her? I'm asking this in case there's a young girl who's listening to this interview right now, is wanting to go into a male dominated environment, is scared. Give us 3 nuggets of wisdom that you could share.
Yeah, the first one I think that is quite important is always follow your gut. Sometimes our gut or our feelings will tell us what's right, and it is always important to make decision not just based on the head but also the heart. So follow your head and your heart when it comes to making a decision. So that's number one. Number two is always go out and talk to people, because everyone will be able to offer you. There's always something that you can learn from different people. So go out, do your research, talk to people, and understand different perspective and different insights. And while it's important to talk to many different people, I think it's also important to put a filter there on what's worth listening and what doesn't fit in well with you. So be okay to discard any advice that you think are not relevant. And last but not least, and probably the most important one, is don't let anyone tell you what you can't do, because you never know your true potential until you actually try and do it. And I think that's probably one of the ones that resonate the most with me, because a lot of things that we see out there may feel scary. We may feel very afraid to try them, but until we actually do it, it will forever until we actually do it, we won't know whether we can do it or not. So be okay with trying it out. So I think that's probably the most important one, is just go out and try. What's the worst that can happen?
I love that. That's a very good piece of advice. So, the last thing I want to ask you is to teleport you now into the future.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to go on a thought experiment to meet the 90-year-old you.
Mm-hmm.
You're now sitting on your porch in your rocking chair, surrounded by your children and grandchildren. If you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman, based on how you are living your life and how she has led you to that point, what would you say to her when you finally meet the 90-year-old you?
You have lived a life where you tried almost everything. I think that would be the most important thing that I would try. I would tell my older self. Um, think I would be very, very sad if I'm given the opportunity to say yes and I actually say no, because you never know what will happen. So just say yes if you feel like this is something you want to do.
I love that. The reason why I asked that question, Pearl, is that a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already here. She's
Mm,
already inside you, and she's already
yes.
guiding you. When you said follow your gut, follow your instinct, that's her
Mm-hmm.
talking to you. So, what I do is I sometimes go into my prayer, my meditation. If I get stuck, I don't know what to do, I ask myself the simple question, what is my next step?
Totally. Totally.
So,
Yep.
thank you so much for being a source of inspiration. You are now a role model for lots of little girls who will see
I
you,
hope so.
who will watch this podcast, who will listen to your voice, hear your story as you describe your career. And now they can see that it's possible for them as well.
Oh,
So
thank
thank
you.
you so much for being an amazing role model for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me as well.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing some phenomenal people to the platform who have broken barriers, who have defied everything that says they can't do something and they say, no, I can. Pearl is an amazing example of that. So come back again tomorrow when I interview another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Pearl, thanks again for this amazing interview.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely